and welcome to Taking Stock. This is your weekly dose of all the action that transpired in the last street, but more importantly, all the action that is set to come. I'm Sonia Shanoy, and with me is Anuj Singhal. Hi Anuj, very interesting week of trade. We had a flat headline index, but all the jewels were beneath the surface. We saw so much buying in the mid-cap space, so much buying in sectors like PSU banks, which went up 5%. And across the board, you got a sense that this bull market is very much intact.
Indeed, Sonia. So 2 or 3 key takeaways from the market this week. One was that if you look at the index, you would get a sense that the market didn't do anything, but that was far from it. Even intraday, the market moved quite a bit. On most of the days of the 5 days of the week. Who would have made money? Those who would have made money would have been ones who would have been long on Bank Nifty, because Bank Nifty rallied about 2%, and those who would have got individual stock selection right, because the mid-cap index was up 3%, the small-cap index was up 5%, and it's been that kind of a month. I think month-to-date small-cap index is up close to 10% now. It's beginning to get a bit worrisome now, the quality of stocks that's rising, but then you have to respect the ticker, and that's right now saying that it's all about mid-caps and small-caps. But I believe we have our experts to tell us what to do next week and how markets could shape out.
Yes, we do. So let's get them on the show. Joining us today, we have Dr. C.K. Narayan of Growth Avenues and Anand Tandon, who joins in as well to give us his view on the market. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us on Taking Stock. Anand, I'm going to start with you. Good week for the market. If you look at the sectors that moved, you had banks, you had autos, the mid-cap index was abuzz with activity. Is this still a buy on dips market, or now would you start to get a bit cautious at higher levels?
There are no dips in the market, Sonia, right now. I think it is just a buy market, and so far, of course, there has been really not much anything to induce any fear. That said, I did hear Anuj mention that it's getting a little flaky, perhaps because of the fact that you cannot sustain a 1% move per day for too long and not begin to feel jittery. And I think it is not perhaps yet at the level where you begin to want to run, but it is certainly a level where, at least in the smaller cap companies, you need to be a little careful about the reasons you're buying the stocks and be comfortable with the fact that you're willing to hold them just in case things do turn sour, though there doesn't seem to be anything right now to particularly induce that fear.
CK, what's your sense? We'll talk about some of these mid-caps and small-caps in a bit, but is the overall texture of the market giving you an indication that a correction is around the corner, or would you say that maybe a bit of a consolidation and then another breakout? In short, how would you approach trade now, especially on the Nifty and the Bank Nifty?
See, I think this market has been a classic example of that old saying of the market that more money has been lost waiting for a correction than has actually been lost during a correction. People have various words to describe it, and most people are actually waiting for a crash in the market. But here is a market which has now trotted on till middle of September, and the maximum correction we have got is about 3-4% on the index. No doubt when the index drops 3-4%, individual stocks do drop about 8-10% or thereabouts, but then that is par for the course. So I think one should just give up this expectation of a correction, and if one is avoiding getting into the market just because there is a fear of a correction, then you are really missing out the boat week after week after week. I think you said it right, Anuj, some time ago when you were, you were referring to the sustained move in the small caps. You said that we should respect the tape, and that is what is the order of the day. We should respect what the market is saying, because in its wisdom it just wants to keep posting higher levels. Now it is we who are expecting a 10% reaction or a 5% reaction or a crash, depending upon where you are in the curve. But none of that is coming. So what you need is definitely to be a bit circumspect about stock choices, I think, but staying away from the market has really not worked. I don't think there is any reason to still stay away. You can be a little more alert with your positions, but most certainly I would say we have to be in this market. There is no question of staying away from it.
Anand, the other question I have is what's happening with global markets, because we have seen crude come down to 97, 98 or so, and of course that's benefited Indian markets. On the other hand, we have seen quite a bit of strength in the dollar, and of course we are very close to the FOMC meeting as well. Do you think global markets could pose a bit of a risk to this market?
Eventually, I think that's where the risk will come from if it does. I think there is a little bit, too much of sanguinity build up in the market, now increasingly in India, but certainly in the global markets. And there are many areas which could be of concern, especially the fact that the Eurozone is still bleeding, the fact that, there could be potentially a hiccup next week in terms of the Scotland issue. Of course, it doesn't seem to affect the market directly, but, there would be some upsets in that part of the world. And the fact of the matter is that the employment ratio is still not looking very good in large parts of Euroland, and US itself is not that particularly strong. The political situation remains weak. So all that are stories which should be concerning the market, but apparently are not. And therefore, you need to stop worrying about it. As CK said, you have to be invested. The only question is that, be careful about where you are investing and don't get carried away too much just because the last stock that you've just figured out has moved up 5%.